In landscape photography, there's really no worse feeling than thinking you got the entire photo in focus, but you actually didn't. So how do you get those photos in focus every single time? I'm going to be showing you how to do that in this video. Welcome to the Landscape Photography University channel, where I show you how to take photos that actually excite you. So if you're into that, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to come back to keep improving your photography. Now, focus. It has a lot to do, of course, with the depth of field that you're using, your aperture that you're using, but it actually has a lot to do with your limitations as well. Let's start from the very beginning. When we're talking about depth of field, it means how much of your photo, the scene in front of you, is actually in focus. When you're thinking about photography, you're creating an image on this. This is a two-dimensional space that you're creating a photo on, but you're recreating a three-dimensional space that's out in front of you. Nature and our world is in 3 dimensions, but a print, a photo, is 2 dimensions. So there's a lot of depth that we have to account for with our photography. Now, when it comes to depth, it depends on how deep of focus you have into your photo. Now, when we're talking about focus, of course, we have to talk about the aperture that you're using in your lens. The aperture controls 2 things. It controls the amount of light that's getting into your lens through blades that exist inside of your lens, but it also creates an amount of depth into the photo. A number like f4 would create more blurring in the background or in the foreground of the photo, or the back or the front of the photo, and something like f16 would create less blurring in the background or the front of the photo or the foreground. Now, I like to be pretty safe when I'm taking photos, so I typically use about f8 to f16 unless I'm doing something that's really specialized in my photography, like macro photography or something like that. So if I'm dealing with a big landscape scene in front of me, I'm typically shooting between that f8 and f16 point. But there are still those situations where there's a lot of depth or space in front of me and I'm not creating the entire photo in focus. More often than not, that happens with a wide angle lens, which creates a wider view of the scene that's in front of us. Typically, that happens more when you're shooting in a vertical aspect like this. Now, if you're shooting vertically, a lot of times, especially if you tilt your camera a little bit forward, you're creating a larger foreground or the bottom front of the photo, and that's pulling a lot of that subject matter into the bottom of the photo. Now, it's also creating more objects closer to the camera. Now, what happens with that is the closer those objects are to the camera, the less chance they have of being in focus. So how do you correct that if you've gone all the way up to f16 and you still can't get everything in focus? You're still in luck. Let me show you exactly how to do this. So here are a bunch of photos that I recently shot of a waterfall. And if you look at these 2 photos, you can see that they're slightly different. That's because the foreground, the front of the photo, was a lot closer to my camera than the background. I couldn't get the entire photo in focus, so what I ended up doing was taking 2 different photos. In one of the photos, in this one, I focused for the foreground or the front of the photo, and you can kind of zoom in and see all the details of the front. And then for the second photo, I focused for the background or the actual waterfall that's in the back. Now, doing this is great. It allows you to get everything in focus in the entire scene, but you're left with 2 photos, right? How do you fix that? How do you combine them? It's actually much easier than you would imagine that it could be. All you have to do is select both of these photos. So select the first one, hold down your Shift key and select the second one. Then right click on those 2 selected photos, go to Edit In, and select Open as Layers in Photoshop. Now, the reason you don't want to open these as separate files in Photoshop is because the workflow is a lot trickier and you have to take one photo, copy and paste it over to the other one. If you just open it as layers, you're eliminating one step in the process and you're already there. Once you have these opened as layers in Photoshop, they'll look like this. Now you can see if I toggle this eye icon off and on, that I'm having those 2 photos stacked one on top of the other. Now the focus issue can be solved in just 2 quick selections and saving it back into Lightroom. All you have to do is select the top layer, hold down your Shift key and select the bottom layer. Then I'm gonna go up to Edit, and I'm gonna come down here to Auto Align Layers. Now, I just keep it on auto. It's the easiest way to do that. And what this is doing is aligning any misalignments that there are in the photo if you bumped your camera accidentally or if there was any focus breathing. Focus breathing is something that when you change the focus on your lens, sometimes that lens can slightly zoom in or out, just barely noticeably. But just doing the auto align layers is going to allow you to easily solve that problem. So you'll see over here on the right side of the photo, I'll zoom in so you can see, there was a slight misalignment in this little white line going on right here. I can easily crop that out later, so no problem with that. Next, I'm gonna have these selected again, and I'm just going to go up to Edit, and I'm going to go to Auto Blend Layers. Now, just keep it in stack images. We're not doing a panorama, and hit OK. This is going to blend the focus points of those two photos together so that the entire photo is in focus. So you can see that our layers in the bottom right part of your screen have changed to allow for pure focus to come in the top photo in the bottom of the foreground where all that white is in the bottom, and then in the bottom layer, we're having a lot of the focus come in the background. This has solved our focus issue, and now all we have to do is just save this back into Lightroom. If I just go to File and Save, and that's just going back into Lightroom, and now we have the entire focus problem solved. Doing this every single time you have any focus issues in your landscape photography is going to guarantee that you have sharp focus throughout your entire photo, and you're not going to be ailing with any focus issues anymore. If this helped you out, here are some more videos that are going to help you too for your landscape photography. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll be cheering you on every step of the way. Comment down below if you have any problems with your photography that you need help with.